is different this year, especially coming off a loss, how big it was. You know, we came in Sunday and just watched the film, and we all said in front of everybody, you know, what happened is in the past. Obviously, it sucks, but we still have to move on. We still got 4 games left in the season to
the kids that from the state of Michigan that have reached out to me, they've all been encouraging, like, go get them next week. You guys still have a chance to, accomplish all your goals. So it was almost like they were rooting for us.
Use this as motivation for a bounce back instead of, like I said, no pointing fingers, no blaming nobody, no blaming the coaches, refs. Just an opportunity to pick each other up and just keep rolling.
We're moving on. It didn't ruin our season. We still got everything we want in front of us. We're going to win out and kind of just let it be the past. Tough loss, but we're moving on. Can't do anything about it.
All right, good afternoon. This afternoon live, that was Zach Zinter, David Ajabo, Ron Bellamy, Michigan safety coach, and there at the top it was R.J. Moten, Michigan safety. Welcome in, joined by Brandon Justice. It's great to have him on here. He's the recruiting editor at TMBR, and I'll wave to him for those that are watching here on the video. If you're listening, yeah, he's looking pretty good. Looks like a young Elvis. I don't know if you like it or not, Brandon.
Yeah, I've got there's a little Elvis fandom in my family, I would say. Not to the largest extent, but I've got it down. I got Southern family, so I've got the Elvis part down for sure.
Well, that's great. Well, here we go. We're now into the we say back half of the weekend. We're certainly going to be talking about some recruiting. Of course, every day we've got the Michigan recruiting spotlight, and it's great to actually have the recruiting editor here. So that's going to be a great segment today. But we will hit on some other things. You got basketball with the exhibition tomorrow, so things are opening up. I was just watching Juwan Howard talking about the Wayne State exhibition right before we came on. So I got the juices flowing a little bit there. I'll ask you where you're at with the basketball team, but I wanted to ask you not so much about Indiana coming up, but I don't know, you run into a lot of Michigan fans over the course of the week, and are people, you get the sense that people are over it and have moved on?
I think people have, moved on from the game itself. I think there's still like that resonating disappointment where it kind of has like that same old song and dance ring to it type of vibe. And I think that was the immediate reaction. But I think you watch that game over again, the Michigan State game, and there are some differences in that game compared to the games that Harbaugh gets lambasted for. You think about the games of the past that he's lost, like the blowout at Ohio State at Buckeye Stadium when Michigan was, the favorite going in. And you think about those games where Michigan was, the 49-20, just embarrassed, on a national stage. That wasn't the case there. Michigan outgaining them and Michigan really in control of that game. Did they throw that game away? Absolutely. Should they have won that game? Absolutely. Is it disappointing? Absolutely. But you're ranked 7th in the college football playoff rankings, and that's a blessing. And you have 2 ranked opponents left in Penn State and Ohio State. In all reality, Michigan controls its destiny here, and whether you like that or not, or whether you agree with that or not, it is completely, up to you. But the reality of the situation is Michigan has an opportunity to win out, beat Ohio State, who's ranked ahead of them, and beat Penn State, who's, shortly ranked behind them, and possibly go to, if not the Big Ten championship, a college football playoff without it, because now there's this crazy scenario where 2 Big Ten teams might make it. So I'll tell you what, it's going to be insane to watch this all unfold. But I think that the college football playoff rankings gave everybody a nice little breath of fresh air.
What I don't like is I don't like games that I know that I'm going to go back and for however long as I live that I'm going to remember for, like, last year, the Lombardi Ricky White game, and this year it's going to be the Kenneth Walker the 5th game or the Kenneth Walker the 3rd game. So I don't like that part. And to your point, there's so many things. It's a little bit for everybody. You want to criticize the coach, you certainly can. There's plenty of items to go through there, and I know and he knew when he was going to play 2 quarterbacks that if they came up short that was going to be a hot topic, and of course it is. But I went back and watched it again on Monday. I mean, here they were in the 4th quarter with the lead, and they sacked the quarterback. They got the ball on the ground. I mean, they jump on that one. I don't know, were they 90% to win that game? I heard from R.J. Moten there right at the top talking about moving on. I mean, he had a pretty good chance. I'd say a great chance, but I mean, he had the ball. It was in his hands, and
Right.
he could have come up with that pick. Michigan's in the lead there. I think they win the game if he comes up with that one. So they had so many plays that you can go back. Of course, I've been scrutinizing, like everyone else, the throws by Cade and the fumble and the two quarterbacks. So yeah, I'm not quite. I'm not over it. I just know how things have worked over the years. You get a loss like this one, even though there's a lot of things to like. I don't know. I think I'll say the right things on Saturday. Maybe I'll say the right things today about, you got to put it behind you and, just think about it. But in reality, I think they go out and play really well against Indiana. I'll still probably be looking back and say, well, why didn't you do that against Michigan State? So I think if they go to Happy Valley and they win that game, and I'm sitting here and saying, all right, they put 2 games behind them and they played well at Penn State, which I don't know, seems to be kind of a toss-up right now. I'll favor Michigan a little bit, but they get 2 games under their belt, and then you can see that finish line. And I think at that point, I'll myself personally be able to say that I'm over it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, this never-ending song and dance of why can't it just go perfectly as we wanted it to, right? Where it's just one of those things where you go into the year, and this is what I've continued to try and hammer with a lot of Michigan fans who are experiencing this disappointment, is I'm like, hey, take who you are right now and remember where you were 2 months ago and compare that to how you're feeling right now. Like, your football team is 7-1, and they were thought to be 7-5 overall. Now, is there still a chance that they do that? Yeah, absolutely. But it's one of those things where they've performed well above expectations. So if you are thinking about this game in the terms of the here and now, or just in terms of the rivalry, then absolutely. I mean, Michigan could be 0-7 going into that Michigan State game. Whether they win or lose against Michigan State still matters, no matter their record. It's one of their main rivalries. It's the in-state rivalry. So that's always going to resonate. But just to your point, I think that should they have this opportunity, they have these last few games, and it's kind of comparable to that Michigan State game where every few minutes, like, they had an opportunity to close that game out. They had an opportunity to keep the Spartans away from winning that game. Well, now they have 4 more opportunities to close this season out, and somehow, some way, if they go 11-1 and find themselves, if not in the Big Ten championship game, if not in the college football playoff, in the Rose Bowl, one of those 3, all 3 of those are accepted among this fan base. You would be crazy to be disappointed in one of those three things, despite the Michigan State loss, considering what this season was supposed to be, according to national pundits and even local people. So, that game sticks because they won the game, they dominated the game, they outgained them, and they had all the chances. But still, miraculously so, Michigan has this crazy opportunity to do what it couldn't do in that game and in this season. So we'll see if that's kind of like that learning lesson.
Yeah, I'm disappointed in everything that I was saying in the offseason, and I'll get to that in a second. I do want to say hi to Hail to Your Victor, who has come in with a message right off the bat saying, good afternoon, fellas. And yeah, good afternoon to you. In the offseason, we play this game. It's what you do. And when the season starts, like, you have new information, so things change. Sometimes the bar gets raised, your expectations and all those kind of things. Like, if you would have told me that Michigan would have been 7-0 going into the Michigan State game, and how would I have felt about that, I would have said some different things. But I was saying in the offseason that, I don't expect them to beat Ohio State or Wisconsin. Those were the 2, but they have to beat Michigan State after what happened last year. That's just a must win. I had it circled. I got it underlined. Remember what I say. I don't see any other outcome where they can end up losing that game. But, here they are, and here we are. And, I don't feel that way now. So, I mean, that's part of it here. But when you do look at the remaining 4 games, if you could tell me that they only lost to Ohio State and maybe played their tail off, how would I be able to go into the offseason feeling pretty good at 10-2? It would take a while. And you know what? Nothing would help me like a bowl win then if they were 10-2.
Right.
But, that's where I'm sitting right now. But let's see them win it out. Let's see them win out. But I'm not ready to say that I think they're going to beat Ohio State.
Yeah, and I think the biggest challenge with Jim Harbaugh teams is how on earth do they start closing out? Because no matter how good or bad they are, they can never close out. They haven't since 2015 when they dismantled Florida in a game that people thought Florida would do that to them. So it's one of those things where Harbaugh's teams have suffered what I like to call the Harbaugh Bowl hangover, where it's caused by the Buckeyes, and they go into these bowl games and all of the I don't know how to say it, but all of the will to win is gone. Like you had, of course, sitting out bowl games if you're a pro prospect it's a part of today's game. That's not going to change. That's not a Michigan centric thing. That's a college football centric thing. That's not Harbaugh induced. That's just football induced. That's how it is nowadays. So sitting out games isn't part of it. Part of it is that Florida game in the Peach Bowl, right, where Michigan plays in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. It's a big stage. It's a national stage. It's the Peach Bowl. It's a good bowl game. And they just got boat raced, and it's not like you didn't have stars in the field. You had Shea Patterson, you had Peoples-Jones, you had Tariq Black, you had a good offensive line that year. It's just one of those things where you to your point about the bowl game, if they lose to Ohio State, so be it. Ohio State is and has been for years now the superior program. So if they lose to Ohio State this year, we'll just say it happens at 10-2. If you're 10-2 and you can go win a bowl game, a decent bowl, like a Peach Bowl-esque bowl game, I think that's a success on the year. I think it is. I just don't know if they are absolutely going to do that based on recent. Has this year different? Is the vibe different? Is Harbaugh different? Yes. But we'll see just how sustainable this change is. How will he react?
Well, thanks for joining us here on this afternoon live. If you're viewing in or you're listening after the fact, we try to get to you every day here at 1 o'clock live, kicking around what's going on with Michigan. We are going to talk some basketball straight ahead. We got the recruiting spotlight, the Michigan recruiting spotlight as well. We got a minute to talk about memorabilia as well. But still, the football, it never goes too far away, and it's still top of mind here. I got one more thing, so Ohio State, Dave's talking about hanging 100 and last year. So you're going to get a lot of that kind of conversation. They've been scoring over 50 points, and I don't know, 62, 50 some odd points, 54, I think, whatever, 52 the year before. So they've been scoring a lot, but it would seem like a victory here today if Michigan could keep them under 30, but I don't even know how realistic. I'll say under 37 because that's how many Michigan State scored. If you had to take the over and under right now, if I put it at 36.5, Ohio State points scored against Michigan, which way would you go?
Well, I'm going to take the over until Michigan proves it can handle tempo. Until Michigan shows that it can substitute at a sustainable pace, there's no way you can not take an over against a team like Ohio State, who for decades, well, at least a decade now plus, has run tempo at a very successful rate, right? Michigan State, not really a high tempo team typically, right? Obviously, this team under Mel Tucker is completely different. This program is completely different with a different entire vibe under him in comparison to D'Antonio. But that being said, Ohio State, Tressel handed it off to Meyer, and Meyer handed it off to Day, and it's just this constant success train. And tempo has always been a part of it offensively. So yeah, I'm smashing the over right now until Michigan can prove that it can substitute at a sustainable pace against that kind of high tempo offense.
Well, I wish you wouldn't have mentioned tempo because you know what? I'm not over the game because if I go back, I understand, Kenneth Walker, he leaves Wake Forest. That guy's got to be sitting around saying, wow, Wake Forest is undefeated. We're undefeated. Who would have thought, but here he is. He's a great back. They can't get him down on the ground. I hated that. Of course, I hated the overturn in the end zone, especially with the announcers like, there's not enough. This one's going to stand. Of course, it didn't. And, the quarterback shuffle when the game is tied there puts a lot of pressure on the QBs, the offensive line, and simple things like exchange with a running back. You got a different, you got different calls, you got different handoff, things can go wrong. All of that happened. But getting outmaneuvered by Michigan State in a first-year staff where, they were doing the tempo thing and clearly it caught Michigan off guard. And, even on the one touchdown, they declined it. Michigan had, half of their guys out of place. So, that's the thing that I'm having a hard time getting over. It's like, these are some of the basic things. Like you have to, during spring ball and everything else, working about getting the right personnel groups in there. And I know Jim didn't. We got to do a better job. How are you going to do a better job? What happened? It's hard to get over. Still here today, that part. No.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that's been echoed by plenty of Michigan fans. It's really hard to buy into coach speak when it's coming from anyone, but the coach speak that we've been given from Harbaugh over the past few years, it's harder to believe in, because you're kind of battling this situation where it's like, is Harbaugh saying this because he's trying to keep everything close to his vest, or is he saying this because he truly believes like, hey, we just got to do better? Like, surely that's not the message he's conveying to his team. Like, surely Mike McDonald is hammering those kinds of things defensively, and when it comes to the quarterback stuff, like, surely they're hammering those things, right? But is he just saying that to the media because that's who Harbaugh's always been with the media? He's short and sweet, doesn't want to give too much away to the media because, for whatever reason, I mean, that's just one of his values, right? I don't know the reasoning, but whatever. It's always been that way. Okay, so you constantly battle, like, is he saying this because he wants to keep it from the media, or are those truly his thoughts on it? Is he really just like, we'll figure it out, it's something we got to take care of? I lean on it just being like, hey, that's who he is with the media. He's never going to show us anything behind door number 1, 2, or 3 when it comes to the questions, especially after a loss. But that's just one of those things where you don't see that a whole lot elsewhere, right? You don't see that a whole lot elsewhere in the Power 5 in the main big programs, besides like a Nick Saban. But I think Nick Saban's earned being able to answer questions however the heck he wants to. So,
all right, that's my impersonation of Nick Saban. Halloween. As you can see there, it's Brandon Justice, but if you're listening, that's who it is. TMBR Recruiting Editor at Brandon Justice _ there at the end. Well, we could sit around talking about football all day long. We also said we were going to get to some other things, and basketball. I'm watching Juwan Howard here at his news conference today. Let's see if we just pop in for a second.
We had many guys that was committed to buying into the defensive side of the ball. I was truly impressed with how everyone has really, committed to that end as far as getting uncomfortable with some of the details and the level of technique that we coach here. But now where we are today is, we have another team that is bought in and is continuing to keep working and building the defensive habits that will carry over hopefully throughout the year and give us the competitive chance of winning the ball game.
Well, that's Juwan Howard just minutes ago from his office as they get ready to get things underway, throwing the ball up with an exhibition jump tomorrow down in Detroit, opening up Wayne State's new building, and we'll turn our attention to the hardwood as well. Brandon, last year, fantastic season. I put it for entertainment value as high as I have put anything for Michigan basketball-wise. So fantastic year. And it's nice to hear Juwan saying that the team is buying in like last year, at least on the defensive side there, and what he had to say. It's just the exhibition opener tomorrow. What are you saying to people that ask you how you think Michigan's going to be this year in basketball?
Well, shoot, it's one of those years where you're kind of like, is it crazy for me to say that I think that they have a legitimate chance to win the national title? Is that great? No, it's not. I mean, they are a legitimate contender in the preseason. They will be throughout the season so long as they live up to some of these expectations. Juwan Howard runs a very straightforward program. He is kind of the opposite of Harbaugh when it comes to media relations. We know exactly what we're to expect out of these teams. We know exactly what to expect out of Juwan Howard as a coach. We know exactly what to expect out of how these teams are going to practice, how they're going to play the floor, et cetera, et cetera. We know these things are set pretty clear to us, I would say, from a coaches to media standpoint, right? And with this team, I mean, hey, we know a lot about it because they got a lot coming back. Eli Brooks, Hunter Dickinson, you talk about all the guys that they're getting back, Brandon Johns, Zeb Jackson, the younger guys like Terrence Williams, who I'm really excited about. And then, of course, the big freshman coming in, Caleb Houston, Musa Diabate, or however you say that. I got to figure that part out.
That sounds pretty close. That sounds pretty good to me, actually. Some people put that J in front of the Jabate, but I don't know. That might be a little French accent to it. But that sounded pretty close.
Yeah. Well, hey, pronunciation is one of my pretty much useless skills, I would say. So Unless I should be a play-by-play guy, maybe that'll help me. But yeah, this team's one of those. It seems like a sure thing that they're going to be really good. I mean, hey, I don't think you're going to watch the national championship, and if Michigan loses, be like, oh, worst season ever. I think like in college basketball, it's not like football, where if you're Alabama, if you're Clemson, if you're Ohio State, not going to the playoff is a huge disappointment. In college basketball, everything is very fluid. It changes like day by day. So if Michigan goes to the Elite Eight and they lose, like that sucks, but that's college basketball, right? They go to the Final Four and they lose, that sucks, but that's college basketball. So, it's just one of those things where I feel like this team is a very, very solid choice to pick as one of your Final Four teams. They've got everything that it takes to be one of those teams. They've got CJ Baird from TMBR did a great job at saying this in one of his write-ups for us. And he said perfectly, Michigan has what a lot of championship teams before it, like the Virginia teams in 2018, like the Villanova teams after that. They have a combination of really experienced, really good players at the top and young talent coming in. So they have everything from Eli Brooks to Caleb Houston and everything in between it. That includes Hunter Dickinson and Terrence Williams and, everything outside of it. So I love the roster, and I think it's going to be in their coach. It all falls in Juwan, and Juwan proved last year how good of a coach he can be, and I think they got a little something to prove. I think that's why Hunter came back, and so we'll see what happens. But this is an exciting team with an exciting roster.
I like your response. And speaking of CJ Baird, I've got a little bit of a promo for you after the Wayne State exhibition tomorrow. Actually, 10 minutes after the exhibition, we'll fire up a live, and CJ Baird expected to join me as we'll talk about what we see out there on our computers, as we will both dial it up and watch the game. And while I am promoting things, people that are watching this can see that you have a 30-day free trial to TMBR. But if you're listening, this is what you want to know. What we're talking about right here, it happens all the time, 24/7. The message boards, the stories, everything you need to know about Michigan. We put together an exciting staff. We're all excited, fired up, and getting after it every day. So you go to michigan.rivals.com, use the promo code GOBLUE30, that's GOBLUE30, and you get 3-day free trial, and you can check it out and say, hey, this is what it's all about, and free. I mean, that's the word right there. GOBLUE30, michigan.rivals.com. So those are all the promo things. I love what you have to say about Michigan basketball here. I can't believe, the thing for me that I liked about Michigan football, growing up in the 70s, really all the way to 2007, the off season, I always felt like Michigan had a chance to win the national championship, certainly the Big Ten. And you know what? Most of those years, they lost some games in there, but most of those games, it was like a play or two or three you could point back to, just like you could this past weekend. In Michigan basketball, obviously, they had 3 shots there in the final, whatever it was, 22 seconds to go to the Final Four, and it just stamped and validated what was really a fabulous season for them getting that Big Ten title. So, yeah, I'm as fired up as could possibly be on the eve of the exhibition opener here for Juwan Howard's team in his 3rd year at the helm.
Yeah, and I think lest we forget, I knew there was a name I couldn't think of, and as soon as I stopped talking, I realized, Dante Jones, the transfer from Coastal Carolina, the point guard, everything I've read, whether it be from Josh or whether it be from, various basketball outlets, the national guys like Rothstein, they are enormous fans of what Dante Jones is going to bring to Michigan's basketball program. And how could you not be? You watch his Coastal tape, and it's pretty exciting. Now, granted, he's playing at a lower level, but Tim McCormick from UMich, he's been pretty straightforward with how impressive Jones has been in practices and how impressed all of his teammates and the coaches have been with him. And apparently, according to McCormick, he's an upgrade. He's an upgrade at the point guard position. And anytime you can say upgrade with this team based on last year's roster to this year, that's a pretty important quote, I would say, because how much better can you get? You went to the Elite Eight and you lost on the inch of a rim. It's one of those things where it's a team that's worth its excitement, right? It's not just 5 freshmen who are, well, not to pun in the Fab Five there, but it's not, a group of freshmen like a Zion's team, right? And CJ made this point in his write-up. It's not like Zion's team where you're like, oh, how good is Zion going to be with RJ? Well, these guys are really talented, but we'll see how they play together. We know how this team plays together. We know how Hunter Dickinson can pass the ball out of the post and cash it in. We know how, the shooters are on this team off the bench, especially. Like, we know how deep Terrence Williams gives this team off the bench. We know how deep Zeb Jackson gives this team off the bench at the point guard position. We know a lot about this team. Really, we do. And everything what we don't know is Caleb Houston and Moussa Diabate. We don't know how good they're going to be, like, truly, but that's about it. If that's the only unknown, that's very good. If you're sitting here thinking about, how much help are we going to get from our transfer point guard and our freshman? Not, we have to rely on our freshmen. You don't have to have that thought. It's just, how much can they help us? Because we have so many veterans around them. So it's hard to not be excited about their roster.
Well, yeah, I'm excited and I'm encouraged on every front. Just listening to you talk there, it worked out so wonderfully with Mike Smith last year, bringing in a grad transfer and knowing what Dante Jones and just looking at his tape, and he shoots 37% from three, 80% from the free throw line. And, he's 23 years old. And then when you get an extra year from Eli Brooks, I mean, all the years watching the tournament, you'd see some of these mid-majors and you'd say, man, this backcourt's been around for 4 years. I mean, these guys are grown men, sometimes going against freshmen and sophomores, even if they're bound for the NBA, they can give them all you can handle. But Michigan's got a 23-year-old Dante Jones and the professor Eli Brooks. And then it's really nice to be able to bring along, whether it's going to be Zeb Jackson or Frankie Collins, as the other point guard or two guard there. I mean, it really sets up wonderfully here. And you just start going through, they've got always the Michigan State rivalry, but what happened with Turgeon last year with Maryland, the kind of fighting back and forth with Illinois. I mean, those games are going to be great. Purdue's up at the top of the league, and that's just, talking about the Big Ten and what's going on there. There's a legit Ohio State looks pretty good. There's a legit, 5-6 teams along with Michigan here every time they play. I mean, these going to be all-out wars and must-see games.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say that Ohio State's basketball team's TikTok account is tough to watch, though. So hopefully their on-court product's better than that, because that's
not good dancers.
No, they're not. No, it's not working out for me. It's the comment section is pretty funny if you're ever looking for a little laugh. Let's say this: Michigan. I'm not trying to jinx anything, but let's say Michigan loses to Ohio State. A nice remedy would be go to Ohio State basketball's TikTok, read the comment section. You'll get a good laugh. It'll kind of reverse your pain a little bit.
I haven't seen any of their TikToks, but I know I feel pretty confident in Adrian Nunez and what he's bringing to the TikTok platform. He's cut, he's pasted, he's dancing, he's doing flips. He's
a role player for sure
when it comes down to TikTok.
Yeah, he's definitely honed in on the TikTok, and it's funny when he posts them after the games, after they win those games, and they do the little dance, and I don't know what to call it. I'll tell you what, I'm 25, so I'm like the young guy around, typically speaking. But when I'm watching TikToks of the teams I cover, it does make me feel old, I will say. So I'm like, well, I'd never do that.
I do too, and I'm watching. I'm like, oh, that's a pretty cool dance move. Wow, that's pretty good lip syncing. And then all of a sudden, it's like, yeah, then she got balloons saying she's just turned 17. I'm like, wait a second.
Hold on a minute.
All right, let's move on.
Scroll.
Maybe cut that last part. My daughter's 16 years old. What's going on? Almost 16 years old. We are going to get to the Michigan Recruiting Spotlight, and that is coming up. You were talking about posting, and on the Mason Blue Review on the message boards right now, I did put a question out there, and I see some response here on YouTube, and I see that we have a response here right on the at least for now, the banner banter, which is exciting. And the question is, when we get into recruiting, I got a lot of questions for you here, and I'll get to them. I just asked the general, what do you like and or dislike when it comes down to recruiting? You don't have to answer that. Of course you can, but let's see what the people have to say, because they are jumping in and answering this. And here is Hail to Your Victor, and I will read it for the people that are listening on the pod when it comes down to it. He says, my least favorite thing about football recruiting is how the rich get richer. In basketball, the top 100 is more spread out, and there is alternative to landing blue chip studs. Brandon, what do you think about a response to when you see Hail to Victor talking about recruiting like that?
Yeah, I mean, hey, it's just a byproduct of how those two sports work. In basketball, you're only adding 4 kids to your class. So when there's a top 100, it's way different. You know, the 100th best player in basketball is extremely low on Duke's list because they only have 3, 4, maybe 5 at the very most spots in their class. Whereas when it comes to football, you're filling anywhere from 16, 17 spots all the way up to Michigan's had as much as 30 during Harbaugh's time. So it's just a byproduct of how many spots you're allowed in the class. So, the top 100 in basketball is spread out more because each school has a smaller quantity that it's taking in. So by those terms, if you're grading recruits based on their ranking, which is not the ultimate, decision by coaches, but let's just for this purpose say that the 100th best player in basketball would be 100 divided by 4. Right. That's how good of a he's going to end up on like the 40th ranked team. Right. So on and so forth. Whereas in football, if you're taking anywhere, the average is like, let's say like 21, maybe less, give or take. The average of that, the 100 mark is, it's just different. It's entirely different. The two sides of, I mean, I guess the dominance, the Alabamas and the Clemsons for now, we'll see what Clemson, the aftermath of this year, the Clemsons and the Ohio States of recruiting in football. Yeah, they dominate. They dominate the top 30, 110%. But I think basketball in the top 30 is way more Duke and North Carolina and UCLA even still, which is crazy that UCLA has turned it all around. It's good for them. But yeah, I mean, just to your point, I think it's just a byproduct of the classes sizes just being completely different in the two sports.
You know what? It reminded me, Brandon, and hail to your Victor. I was listening to Gary Danielson, who does SEC games through the year, former Lion. He's a college football commentator. Most people are familiar with him, but he did the Georgia-Florida game, and Georgia came out, ran right over him, just kicked the crap out of him. Florida got a late touchdown, but he said, I don't know. He was talking to Kirby Smart after the game, and Kirby Smart said, look, half of what we've got going on down here is recruiting. It's 50% recruiting. And Gary said over the last 4 years, Georgia's got like 25 5-stars in Florida, which is, pretty big name football. They've had some different coaches here, but they've only had like 3 or 4. It's something like that. 25 to 3 or 4 over the last 4 years. I mean, that's hard to compete with the Georgia, Alabama. You said Clemson. We know Ohio State. I mean, that's the one thing. The top guys have really filtered all through, the 4 schools. That was something that reminded me just what Danielson said yesterday.
Yeah, Georgia's roster this year is like the perfect storm. It's the perfect scenario. It's what every school dreams of happening. They want to bring in every single 5 and 4-star, and they want them all to stay through their development. That never happens, especially with the transfer portal. But for Georgia, it's not perfectly what happened. I mean, there was definitely kids who left by all means. Like that's going to happen no matter what. But for the most part, they kept everyone that they wanted to keep. For the most part. And they've had this perfect scenario where now Georgia knew before. I mean, everyone who knew anything about recruiting or anything about not only the development that Georgia has, that's one thing, but the whole separate thing is everyone knew seeing their 2019, 2018, 2020, 2021 classes all shaping up. Everyone knew like if Kirby Smart had half a brain, this roster was going to be crazy by 2021, right? And that's exactly what it's been. That roster is unbelievable. That defense is absurd, right? And it's not shocking. They've had the perfect scenario.
For the this is off the cuff for the people that are watching. Can you do a Kirby Smart just impersonation? You don't have to talk like him, but what he does on the sideline, I think I could. I'll go for
his little leap, yeah.
There it is. I was just doing a lot of gesturing and things like that.
Yeah, he's just begging for the cameras. It's recruiting.
Yeah,
you see how much I fight for my guys, type of stuff.
He's demonstrative on the sideline, that's for sure. All right, one more from Hail to Your Victor, who has a basketball question. He says, we are traveling to Ann Arbor for a 2-game home slate. He's never been to Chrysler. We chose the week of Rutgers and Illinois over Purdue and Michigan State. Thoughts? He said, my thought was the late February game might be playing for a conference championship. So that went into it. Thinking about that could, that could be, playing for playing for it all. Well, cutting down the nets, maybe. All right, what do you think?
Well, Rutgers is a good team. Rutgers isn't going to be like a doormat. I think they're going to be a good team. So I don't think that you can look at that game and be like, that's a good game. Illinois is obviously going to be awesome. I mean, that one's got as much build-up as the Michigan State game will have, I think, honestly. And that's not even hyperbole, in my opinion. I think that Hunter Dickinson's comments at media days about Illinois and just everything that happened last year with the whole co-Big Ten champ thing and not being co-Big Ten champs and yada, yada, yada. I think that's a huge buildup. And I think he makes a great point. He or she, makes a great point in saying that the Illinois game will be a conference decider, right? So not only does it have this buildup in its hype and the hate of it all, but also it could be a conference swinger. So I don't think you're going wrong there. Purdue versus Michigan, Purdue and Michigan State are both going to be incredible teams. So those could potentially both be top 10, top 15 matchups. I don't think the same of Rutgers. So I think you're getting, I don't know. I think Illinois is probably going to be a more important game when it comes into terms of the conference and how it's decided than any of the games listed. However, I think you've got Rutgers, which is going to be the least important of the three. So
yeah, I don't think you can lose, but you're right. Illinois, Michigan, that's the last game in February. They have 2 games after that. They host Iowa, and then they have to go to Ohio State on March 6th. That is Selection Sunday. So it's probably going to come down to those last 2 games. But you know what? You can't miss if you're going to Michigan State, Purdue, Illinois, Maryland, Ohio State. Those 5 games right there. You're guaranteed for absolute excitement and great theater at Chrysler. The thing it'll be jam packed to the roof, and people will be going bonkers. So I don't think you can lose, but I would have picked Purdue and Michigan State myself. But maybe it comes up where you get the winning lottery ticket there, and it is a chance to clinch, and then you can say, you know what. We had that one down. We were ready to go. So nice job there.
I think it's good. I think you're good either way there. I mean, obviously the pageantry of a Michigan State basketball game is awesome. But I think there is more hatred in any of those games in the game against Illinois than anything else. If you would have gotten Maryland and Illinois, you would have gotten the hatred bowl itself, because between what happened last year with Michigan and Maryland, on top of the Michigan, Illinois, like we already covered, would have been crazy. But yeah, I don't think you can go wrong either way there. I think you're going to have a blast regardless.
I'm doing a lot of teasers here. Another teaser is that we're going to have a podcast, digital cast coming up later on today that's going to be out. And it's featuring Brandon Justice, the recruiting editor. And you have come up with a great name for the pod. It's Who's Got Next? Is that it? Is that right?
Yeah. Who's Got Next? It's going to be our recruiting podcast. Every Thursday, and really looking forward to it. Wanted to get a little creative with the names, so we called it Who's Got Next. And we're going to do football and basketball, heavily focused on football for the time being, just because basketball is more of a slow burn. Football is far more day-to-day. So, yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to be doing it. You're going to be on it. Tanner Wooten, who is one of our staff writers covering recruiting with us, is going to be on it. He and I have done podcasts together before, so there's a lot of familiarity there, and it's going to be great. Like, I am extremely excited to roll this whole thing out and give you guys a platform to hear about recruiting every week in audio format and video, which you're all over that. I've never been on the video before. This is new for me, but I'm all about it.
Yeah, well, you should be. Come on, you're looking good for all the ladies that are tuning in. Come on, there's Brandon Justice, and you saw his Twitter feed on there. Probably everybody, following him. And so you can always get involved in that for people that are watching right now. I can throw it up there. There it is.
Get careful. I think my girlfriend's watching it. Girlfriend's watching it. If there's any sort of support in her blood, she's watching. We'll see though. I told her first video podcast, so you might want to tune in. We'll see.
Yeah, well, everybody should be tuning in. That's and speaking of, the recruiting angle, every day, a Michigan recruiting spotlight I bring to you. And if you've been watching over these first few days, you're saying, wait a second, I know everything that he's talking about. Really for the last 15 years, I didn't take a complete pause on recruiting because, I still watch what Michigan was doing. And man, there was an announcement coming forth, that morning, and refreshing, and the anticipation, it was all still there. The hair standing up on the back of my neck. But, the day-to-day recruiting game, which for over 10 years, 11 years when I worked in Ann Arbor, it was something, that was just a daily, if it wasn't by the hour or minute, it certainly was daily. And so I was going to tell you my favorite thing and least favorite thing about recruiting. And my favorite thing is to be an expert like yourself, you got to do a lot of work. I mean, you got to contacts, you're on the phone, you're texting, you're tweeting, you're doing all these different things. It takes so much because the people that are the recruitniks that are really into it, they know everything right up to the second, man. And so you have to be so precise and what you're saying and your predictions and everything else that it's a lot of hard work what you do. But to be a fan and just get involved in recruiting like I am here, I can't fool anybody saying, that I'm jumping in and I'm some expert. I'm just going in wide-eyed. And to be a fan of it, it is fun, man. You can just dive in and you can just be like, whoa, what's happening here? Who are they going to get? In all of the memories come back of following it. And the thing is, it's like, it's intense and it's really an adrenaline rush, man. Like you could follow a kid that you think Michigan's going to get and you basically fall in love with them and then you get spurred at the last moment. And the next thing you know, you got somebody else coming in and you're like, oh my God, we got a replacement. So there's so many highs and lows. That's the down part for me. There are so many highs and lows, and that you always say anything can happen in recruiting. And we've seen it. I mean, you might think and then, man, you get the rug pulled out from under you. That's the part that I don't like.
Yeah, I mean, it's so fickle, right? And kids say the darndest things. That's like the best way I can describe it. And so when you first start covering recruiting, well, I will say this. You kind of mentioned a little bit of like recruiting in the past. And so like rewind back to 2016, 2017, Harbaugh's first like real, like he had proved it in 2015 that Michigan could be competitive. And now he was trying to build this class. And 16 was like the Rashawn Gary and the Devin Bush. And, when those classes started happening, things were, you're talking signing of the stars, where he was putting on a whole show for these kids, right? So it was becoming this insane thing where not only was people like Rivals covering it, but you had all sorts of indie people who were just like appearing on Twitter with like a M emoji next to their name and tweeting out recruiting news. Like, oh, his kid's for sure going to Michigan. I was messaging him and he said, I want to go to Michigan. So he's going to Michigan. And I'm like, did you talk to the coach? Did you talk to the handler? Was there any sort of situation where you got word from like actual people involved in the situation that he's going to go there? Or is he just DMing you over Twitter telling you he's going to go there? So then it started to become this thing where we had to like weed out what was misinformation and what wasn't. So like my DMs were like, oh, is this true? And I'm like, no, none of that is really true. They're just making up stuff to like go along with whatever. None worse than the Najee Harris situation. The Najee Harris recruitment was the most insane thing I ever experienced in writing. So I was lucky enough to be at the All-American game at the time, a All-American game. I don't know if I'll talk about it in this podcast, but I was at a All-American game and I was covering it and I was at a practice and went up to him and interviewed. He never interviewed. And he's like, well, don't interview me, but you can talk to me. I was like, all right, so no recorder. He's like, no recorder, but we can talk. And I was like, okay. And he's just like, I was like, are you going to commit? He's like, no, I'm just going to show up. So I tweeted that out and I wrote a story about it. And sure enough, 2 days later, he showed up in Birmingham and he was in Tuscaloosa a couple days later. And everyone was like, you said blah, blah, blah. And I said, no, I said, I have no idea what he's doing because nobody truly does. So yeah, the Najee Harris situation, the misinformation spread was insane. The flight tracking, crazy. Talking about a 17-year-old kid couldn't even get on the Delta flight without like 4,000 people knowing about it. It's crazy.
Yeah, coming up later on, we'll be talking about some of the specifics and who Michigan is in on, the big fish that are left, the top stars, what the board looks like, what Brandon is hearing, the latest. We'll get into all of that. I want to ask you a couple general things for people that are watching here this afternoon live on the Spotlight, and that is the NIL and also the transfer portal. I don't know, last year Michigan, where they get 3 guys in the portal, Bowman, the quarterback, the defensive tackle, Jordan Whitley, and then the wide receiver, Dalen Baldwin. I think those are those 3. So, and we saw just how effective it was for Mel Tucker and Michigan State, hitting the transfer portal. Let's start there with the portal. I keep, the Dr. Pepper commercial. I can't get out of my mind. It's like you just jump through the thing and you're gone. You're just gone just like that. The next guy's coming in. As long as you got a couple soda cans, you're ready to take them. So I don't know. The portal in Michigan. Do you think they turn it up on the portal? It stays the same. What do you think?
I think it's going to be interesting. I think it's really contingent upon a lot of things. It's how is this class going to round out? Will they lose anybody in this class? So that plays a role. Will they lose anybody else to transfers, right? Because last year they suddenly lose Giles Jackson. That's their big speed guy receiver. So they went out and got Baldwin, who couldn't match that role or has tried to. We'll see how that plays out. Having to come in when he came in was tough. So I think it really is contingent upon the situation and who's in the room. Because here's the thing. This is something that fans really get caught up in. They get caught up in names. They're like, well, Michigan needs this guy because all they have is this guy. And I'm like, okay, to you, what you see on the game field once a week for 12 weeks out of the year is far different than what these coaches who, hey, you can bash coaches all you want and you can say whatever you want about the staff. They're professional football coaches. So you know what I'm saying. They're full-time football coaches, right? College. I'm going to trust what they see for, the other 300 days of the year outside of what you have produced in your mind for 12 games out of a whole entire calendar year, right? So you might think that the cornerback room is like really thin and it's going nowhere, but they might see DJ Turner hitting this huge stride next year. Like he's just going to take this huge turn next year because in practice he's so much better. Or you might think that they need to get more receivers because this year that's kind of been their, kryptonite on offense. They don't have a go-to guy receiving wise, right? But they might see it as, well, Sanders still is really good in practice. We haven't gotten him enough opportunities in the game. And I'm not saying that's true. I'm just bringing up random names and fitting them in. That's where the portal comes into play. It's like, do we believe in this guy? Because if you bring somebody in at his position, one of two things are going to happen. You're going to make him real mad, and he's going to transfer, which you can say that's the wrong thing to do or not. That's just based on opportunity. That's what college sports is about, is maximizing opportunities for student athletes. It's not about making your team better. Hate to say it. And then the other side of it is that guy says, awesome, now I'm going to work harder. So it's one way or another, right? You don't know what you're going to get. So it's based on so many things. There's so many contingencies. Like, can X coach trust X player to not run away when they bring in X player to the position group, right? Is he sitting down and saying, hey, we're going to get this other cornerback. I just want to let you know that when he comes in, the only thing he's guaranteed is the same thing you are, right? So, like, what's going on there? That's really what the portal is about, in my opinion. So seeing what happens there contingent upon that. I mean, hey, I think they go get a receiver, maybe corner, maybe backer. It really all depends. Do they think Junior Colson's looked real good? Is he going to step up next year and be the guy at the backer position? Maybe. It's just one of those things where they're going to have to evaluate what they have, right? Do they lose Ojabo? And does the pass rushing have a sudden complete disparity in comparison to this year? Maybe they'll get an edge rusher. There was somebody that they got who was a pass rusher from Central Michigan. I can't think of his name. A couple of years back, he was real good. I can't remember his name right now off the top of my head.
He's in the pros. He went to the Chiefs.
Yeah, I can't think of his name though. But either way, you get my point. That's kind of where I'm at with Portland. And the NIL is awesome. I think it's long overdue and it's completely necessary. And I think Michigan, when it gets everything together, because it's U of M, they want to do things the right way. They want to have a drawn out process. And I get it. You're a very high level institution, so I understand it. When they figure that all out, and they have a nice set plan, which I don't think that they've had the best of so far, they have a huge opportunity and an advantage because of the amount of connections, not only through just the institution itself, but through its alumni network, to do a ton of things for the student athletes. I mean, like a plethora of things for the student athletes. For Michigan to not the alumni network is insane, and they all want to see this football program win. So that's where I'm at with it.
Tell me about the name, image, and likeness. Now, you said people get caught up in names. the summer, people were caught up in, hey, Michigan can now, forget the dirty part. Everybody can, you just start paying guys, and Michigan's got this national reach. They've got money coming out of everywhere. I mean, this thing, Southeast Michigan's got 6 million people around here. This thing's going to be great for the Wolverines. How have you seen it playing out? I know people are just trying to get the feel. There's not a lot of rules, a little bit of Wild West here. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I think it's something where, it's just, you're going to have to gradually go with it and, figure things. There's a little bit of trial and error. I think every school is kind of experiencing that. I think there's going to be schools that overdo it. I think there's going to be schools that underutilize it, and they're going to adjust year to year. And I think 3, maybe 2 seasons from now, you'll see a lot of schools really master it and take a lot of advantage of it. But I think right now, everyone's still kind of in like, what are we doing? Like, some schools are just hammering it, and like, that's not going to play long term. Whereas like hammering it to every single one of your players at a high capacity might not be sustainable. I don't know. I don't know I don't know what goes on within like BYU's football program, but but like with Michigan, it's one of those schools where it's a very respected institution, and the alumni and the current staff and everyone who works there takes, the pride and respect of this institution very serious. And so when it comes to something like this, they want to make sure it's as drawn out and as, like detailed as possible. They're very detailed people there. And I understand it. Michigan has values. They stick to them. I get it. They just have to kind of like draw this all out, because here's the thing. I mean, in my opinion, the football staff is probably like, let's get everyone, like, let's, how do we get everyone here $1 million like Quinn Ewers got, right? Like, how do we get everyone? Quinn Ewers is the quarterback at Ohio State, who should be a senior right now, but instead he signed like $1 million+ endorsement deal, and now he's a freshman at Ohio State. So, that's how it goes, right? So I'm just curious to see if Michigan starts doing those big splashy things, because as you remember, when JJ McCarthy before the season tweeted out, he had this long drawn out post about how he was going to participate in the NIL, and he was going to, look forward to these opportunities in the NIL. But he was committed to Michigan. Like he was all about football. He was all about football, not the endorsements. He was all about football. So begs the question, like, is this football staff like, hey, endorsements are great, but football first? Or are they like, hey, let's all get endorsements, but let's also be about football first too, right? It's just, can we marry those two things together, or is one going to distract from the other? So there's just a lot of things that go into it. I think they're all trying to figure it out.
Certainly a lot to talk about when it comes down to the transfer portal in the name, image, and likeness, something that 2 years ago, paying players and being able to just jump right in and be gone in an instant, or things. Maybe that one was people felt like it was going to happen more than the other one. Mike Dana.
That was his name, Mike Dana.
You were thinking of, I wish I would have been able to come up with it on my own. I had to look it up. I did for a second. I think if we go back and listen to the tape, I did say Mike, but
yeah, right. It was Mike. Yeah, there was a Mike out there. We both knew it was Mike. We just couldn't figure out which Mike it was.
We didn't. We couldn't. Before we give our some parting shots here, it's time for the memorabilia minute. There it is. And that the Atlanta Braves, I saw somebody today posting about the Braves, and maybe this gave them hope as a Tigers fan, because the Braves caught fire, and won the World Series for the first time in 26 years. Well, the Tigers have not won a World Series for 37 years. They were there in 2006. They were there in 2012, and they got swept by the Giants. But the memorabilia minute today is a baseball, and it is a baseball from the 1984 World Series. There it is. I don't know if they used the ball. I don't know. It is Dan Petrie.
Nice.
One of the starters on the team. That's the memorabilia minute there. I know you like baseball, Brandon, so
yeah.
I'll put that into the mix.
Dan Petrie is an assistant coach on the best high school team in the country now, Orchard Lake St. Mary's, who his son Matt is the head coach of. A very good friend of mine. And also Brian Sikowski coaches that team. So yeah, that's a great staff. But yeah, they won the national championship this year, 44-1 record. It was literally insane. They mercied their way to a state championship. So I think like 16 Division I commits. So great for the state, great for talent. I mean, people have their discrepancies with superpowers, right? Like teams that are super teams. But I mean, hey. Build it and
Well, I
it'll
like
come.
Peaches.
That's my thing.
Yeah, I like Peaches myself, except that his other son went to Michigan State to play hockey. He's now on the pros,
Right.
and
On the move,
I think Dan's partial to the green and white. It comes down to, the backyard brawls or whatever else. So he's probably this week. Hey, I liked him, back in the day, and maybe I can get another baseball. Maybe it'll say 2022, and I'll get Carlos Correa sign it. So
yes, sir.
that's it.
We were all about Correa.
That is it. Brandy, you did a great job. I didn't tell you how long, we were going to be on here, but if you would have asked that question, I'd say, we'll probably go like a half hour. And now when I look at the tape, 55 minutes. So we've overshot it. But the good part here is that, you can always go as long as you want. So great thoughts on football, on basketball, and then on recruiting. And you know what? I know you've got your phone over here, your computer, and things probably blowing up with all this recruiting news and everything else. So we look forward to who's got next coming up, and we'll have that for you. I don't know if it's going to be later on today or when that's going to drop, but we're going to record it, have some fun, and you'll see that straight ahead. So you got any final thoughts?
No, thanks for having me. That was a blast, and looking forward to this. Well, looking forward to doing this throughout, and thanks for tuning in, everyone.
Yeah, I'll just say it's on to Indiana, and it's on to who's got next. See you later.